Welcome to midterm. At this point, I hope you're feeling very comfortable about our public health system because we'll now be moving into health policy and administration. We start Module 4 off with the overarching level of the ecological model, policy. In this module, we analyze a given policy by identifying the social, political, economic, and ethical values and assumptions that have influenced its development and implementation, and apply a policy analysis framework to the evaluation of potential policy alternatives. And then, given this current public health policy issue, we'll design an advocacy strategy for a specific public health policy reform. The Module 4 case studies provide examples of public health policy and its implications. These case studies can even begin to give you ideas for the Module 4 tools. The mandatory premarital testing for HIV case study exemplifies the policy cycle stages. World's first public health mayor case study provides another illustration of the conflict between individual liberties versus the public good. So jumping right into the mandatory premarital testing case study, back in December of 1982, a report in the MMWR described 3 AIDS cases from whole blood transfusions. As I was preparing this presentation, I was wondering if there was anyone else who could remember when this happened. I remember where I was in school and being told not to use water fountains when the first AIDS case presented. So, back to December of 1982, a report in the MMWR described these 3 AIDS cases from whole blood transfusions. So, by 83, widespread recognition of the problem of transfusion-related AIDS led to controversial recommendations that those in known high-risk groups voluntarily defer from donating blood. Then by June of 84, after the discovery of HIV, 5 companies were licensed to produce the ELISA test kits for detecting the HIV antibody. So now fast forward to 1987. More than 60 legislative proposals were introduced into the state legislature. About 3/4 of these called for testing various subgroups in the population, including food handlers, teachers, public safety personnel, and marriage license applicants. Interpreting this case study really focuses on science. Well, actually, some concepts that you've learned in EPI, as they can provide sound evidence for considering the implications of a mandatory premarital HIV screening mandate. This study forces us to revisit sensitivity, specificity, positive and negative predictive values. As I'm sure you gather, these values are not at the core of this course, but understanding the implications of public health policy, what makes an effective public health policy, and how to evaluate its effectiveness is what this study shows us. So the next slides look at the case study through this lens. These next slides also serve as a nice little review of some EPI methods. Please look through these on your own as a reminder. And as you go through these, consider how they help you to evaluate, confirm, and/or deny the policy. So I realized that was a little quick, but you can go back to the PowerPoint without the voiceover that I uploaded to study it more carefully. Because these slides will help you to more profoundly respond to the conferencing exercise question. Now let's shift gears to the world's first public health mayor case study. I added this ecological model that we've seen before for my school-based obesity prevention work as a reminder of how policy fits into the public health infrastructure and system. You can see it at the top there, and you can see some of the interventions that we did in Cambridge. And because the relentless obesity epidemic is the backdrop of this case study, I've included this model. The key points here, as well as the key learning objectives, have to do with how we decide when to legislate, what to legislate, and how to judge, evaluate efficacy. Public health ethics, as we discussed in our first week, also play a key role here. This case study revisits the conflict between individual liberties versus the public good. So this study mostly focuses on New York City. On January 22nd, 2008, the New York City Board of Health approved an amendment to the city's health code requiring certain food service establishments to post calorie information prominently on menu boards and menus where consumers may see this information when they order. And then the specific policy initiative that we're talking about here in our conferencing exercise question is the ban on the sale of sugary drinks larger than 16 ounces at restaurants and concession stands. And going back to this case study being a conflict between individual liberties versus the public good, and now studying Chicago, the Chicago mayor, instead of creating policy, he had pop machines, as you say in Chicago government buildings post calorie information. And also, city workers were able to win cash in a health competition paid for by none other than Coca-Cola and other beverage giants. So I think this case study, and when you compare to Chicago, really juxtaposes how we create intervention in public health, considering individual liberties, but also understanding the role and power of policy. So now with that, I will look forward to you reviewing the case studies and the information and your discussion of these topics. Thank you.